Welcome to Man on the Panel, where I take my seat at the table and break down the biggest debates from The View, other panel shows, and the world of politics. Whether it's a fiery debate on daytime TV or a latest political controversy, I'm giving you my unfiltered take, so let's get into it. So, as you guys know, I am a huge fan of The View, and I probably watch it every day. I think they had a really good discussion regarding DEI and our former transportation secretary, Pete Buttigieg, his view on it. And I think you'll be pretty shocked at whose side I'm falling on. Let's get into it.
Trump continues to pull initiatives that promote diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI. Everybody knows it as that. Former Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg weighed in with a take that surprised some people. Watch.
What do we mean when we talk about diversity? Is it caring for people's different experiences and making sure no one's mistreated because of them, which I will always fight for? Or is it making people sit through a training that looks like something out of Portlandia, which I have also experienced, and it is how Trump Republicans are made. If that comes to your workplace with the best of intentions, but doesn't actually get at what actually matters here, what's actually at stake.
So do you agree with him that DEI initiatives drove voters to Trump? And what else can be done to make sure everyone is represented on an even playing field?
You know what I think?
I don't necessarily, well, first of all, I think Pete Buttigieg is one of the most brilliant minds we have in politics. I wouldn't necessarily want him to be president simply because I feel like it would be more of the same, especially coming from the left. But I will say I definitely agree with him when he says DEI should not just be PowerPoints in some corporate office where everybody feels obligated to do so. I think diversity, equity, and inclusion should definitely have more teeth to it. I'm currently a part of a DEI team in my company where I currently work, and honestly, sometimes I feel like we just get together to complain and shoot out pie in the sky ideas, when a lot of times I'm going into these meetings with the end goal of thinking, what is the goal? How can we execute our beliefs of DEI and actually implement it throughout the company? What does our hiring look like? What does our C-suite look like? Different things of that nature. If we're just throwing at our grievances or giving people PowerPoints to watch, is it that great or that effective, I should say?
I like Pete, of course, but I think he got that so wrong, and I think it was so tone deaf, considering
Which
what's
part?
going on. All of it. I thought all of it was tone deaf, because what happens is when from 1776 to 1965, you have basically white men in charge of everything, right? Women, people of color, we're left out of just equality of opportunity, that sort of thing. And I think when that equality starts popping up in terms of diversity program, equality now feels like oppression to those people who were at the top of the ladder.
Now, that part I definitely agree with. I'm not sure as to why she's saying that in response to Pete Buttigieg, but I am of the belief that when you have only had to compete against people that look like you, that have had similar experiences as you, it makes the pool of people fighting for an opportunity very small. So once you start widening the pool and allowing different types of people that have historically been ostracized from opportunities, me being a perfect demographic of that, being a Black gay male, if I was born in another time, I do not believe I would have achieved or have gotten as far if I were born, let's say, in the time that my dad or my grandfather was born. And so I do believe that any speech about equality does feel like oppression to white men.
Not necessarily because of their merit, but because of their identity, right? And so in my view, when you look at the stats, it is really clear from McKinsey, actually, a consulting firm that Pete used to work for, that firm found that companies with more diversity financially and socially outperform those that are less diverse. So the business case for diversity, equity, and inclusion, it makes sense. And I think we can all agree that we want our workforce to reflect what our world looks like.
I think
I agree with everything Sonny just said. I just don't think that that's what Pete was saying. He wasn't saying that DEI doesn't work. I think he was saying that we have to be careful or more smart and poignant on how we apply DEI. Is DEI supposed to just be PowerPoints with no end goal and no application? Or is DEI actually supposed to be about bringing in the most diverse and best talent to promote business growth and expansion? I think she's having two different conversations.
he does too, though, don't you?
No, I think he does. But my question, really, I think we need to reframe the discussion. If the problem is these programs, what is the solution? Should we just then depend on the benevolence of Elon Musk and white billionaires to hire women and people of color?
No.
Should we just depend on corporations to, on their own, make the workforce more diverse? They didn't do it from 1776 to 1965. Why do we think it's going to be any different?
Now, again, I agree with her, but again, I don't feel like that's what Pete is saying. Pete has never and will never be on the side of getting rid of DEI or how the right wants to get rid of it. But I think he's saying it's about how it's applied. Does it actually work in the way that some of these companies do it?
I think you hit on something important, which I genuinely believe most Americans, and I think everyone at this table thinks that workforces, organizations are stronger when there's diversity and representation. What he's getting at, I think, is how do you actually achieve that? And I think that in this era, there's been almost this DEI industrial complex. And it's funny you mentioned McKinsey, because a lot of consultants get hired by big corporations to make people feel really good that they're achieving diversity because they put on a seminar, because you watch something, because you said Latinx instead of Latina.
Exactly. And this is what I was saying in the intro about you'll be shocked at who I agree with on this panel. Because again, I do agree with Sunny's sentiment, which I tend to agree with Sunny's sentiment, because on that panel, I would say she probably has the closest politic to me, even though I would say I'm much further left. But in this conversation, I would say that Alyssa definitely understood exactly what Pete was saying. It's more so about how it's applied. When she says it's the DEI industrial complex, it is supposed to just be a slap on the back to, or like a pat on the back to corporations, like, hey, I got a DEI program. Look what we're doing. See, we care about it. But then, like, how is it actually applied? Is your staff or corporation becoming more diverse with people of different backgrounds, experiences, and, culture?
And I don't know that there's actually huge metrics I've tried to find, because you can cherry pick and you can see them, that is actually working. What I would love to see is culturally people wanting to have diversity that's across the board, socioeconomic, racial, that people's lived experience, their religion, so that workforces do look like America. I think that's a perfectly reasonable place. And I think that's what he was saying. I don't think he's saying that we need to end any programs that include more people.
I'm going to take this from a...
Agreed, Alyssa. See, I feel like I'm doing more and more videos where I am agreeing with Alyssa, and it's low-key bothering me.
And he was responding, Pete Buttigieg, to a question by Axelrod, basically saying that the DNC had turned into a caricature of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Here's the part that is vexing me constantly. Seems to me every time I turn on the TV or go on social media, I see Democrats tarring and feathering themselves, self-flagellating themselves, talking about all the things that they do wrong and that they did wrong. And look, I think there's a place for...
Anna, Democrats need to do a lot more self-flagellation when it comes to how they screwed the pooch on this election. I don't think that they have done enough. I think they should be doing that at least the first year of Trump. I think they can walk and chew gum at the same time. I think that they should be able to recognize their failures, but then also figure out how to get messaging together and get their policies together to bring back a lot of the demographics that they lost.
New York Times staged fake interviews with diverse candidates. Wells Fargo, the New York Times reported it. Sorry, just to be clear, a woman or a person of color, after the position had been filled, to check off their boxes of minority inclusion. That's not helping anyone. So a lot of the problem is that,
that implies that
Lily
the woman wasn't qualified for the job.
There was no job. Lily Zhang.
So, okay, and I'm going to try to find the article to put into this video. But what Sarah is saying is 100% correct. And then Sunny jumping in saying, well, that implies that the woman was not qualified for the job. No, that's actually not what Sarah is saying about this particular job at Wells Fargo that actually didn't exist. When you have certain DEI initiatives, what a lot of companies will do in order to meet certain quotas to say like, hey, I'm interviewing wide swaths or very diverse pools of talent to possibly hire them. Sometimes just to hit those quotas, they will create a fake job and interview a lot of people that are, of color or different backgrounds, essentially anyone that's not a white man, just to say they've done it, when in actuality, there is no intent to even hire this person because the job doesn't exist. They actually did this with an NFL team, if I'm not mistaken. They were interviewing for a head coach, and basically the head coach had already been hired, but in order to fit some of NFL's DEI / everything that happened after Kaepernick to become a less racist league, they set up all these interviews with these black coaches, essentially knowing that they would not be hiring them because the role was already filled.
To change it, Sonny, you've been asking all day, like, what are the things?
What's the solution?
So she has solutions. She's saying focus on measurable results like pay equity, physical and psychological safety, holding network events, blind hiring. There are a lot of things that you can couch
Blind
in.
hiring, that makes sense.
Right.
But
the
isn't
point
that
is,
kind of merit-based? Isn't that the whole argument that DEI is against?
well,
is
she
merit-based?
dug in because she
No,
studied,
but
she's a consultant on
DEI
DEI for
is not
companies for.
So this is where I disagree with Alyssa. I don't know if you guys saw how she slipped that in there. She says, well, isn't blind hiring the opposite of DEI because that's merit-based? By her saying that, that makes the assumption that DEI only wants to promote or put people in positions that are not of merit, that do not have the qualifications or deserve that job based off of merit, but only off of identity. And that is not true. Blind hiring, what that would look like, where you have no idea what this person looks like. You have no idea, let's say you may not even know their name. All you have is their resume in front of you. So if you just have their experience and their resume in front of you, then obviously you could just call this person and let's say have a phone screen. And then when you finally meet them in person or a Zoom call, that is who you get to see. But again, with blind hiring, how this works out, let's say if you're looking for someone with education, with a certain level of education and a lot of experience, we all know that Black women are the most educated demographic in this country. So therefore, if you are doing blind hiring and a bachelor or a higher degree is required, a lot of times you're going to get a lot of Black women. So merit-based actually does benefit Black women or people of color. But if you are not doing blind hiring and only hiring people that look like you, if you're a white man, then it isn't blind. Does it make sense? So I disagree with Alyssa in there, and she was very sneaky in that.
For 10 plus years. And what she's saying is, regardless
Blind
of the
hiring is the opposite of DEI.
No, that's not true.
The results, just for
But you
anyone listening
cannot
still,
mention-
the results of this are saying that there were people there that needed help with the diversity, the equity, the inclusion, bringing people on. The pay disparity still exists. They aren't getting the job. So not every critic of DEI, which I am one of them, says that it can't do better.
I agree with Sarah there 100%. Again, my identities are, I'm a Black gay man, and I am extremely critical of DEI in its application. I do think that it should exist, but I think it should be overhauled in the way of application. I think sometimes it is just said, to me, it's the DEI now in a lot of ways that it is implemented is the equivalent of a white person saying to me, I'm not racist, I voted for Obama. And it's like, thanks. I appreciate that. But how does that look in your everyday life? How are you showing up in your everyday life? Like, yeah, does that make you a great ally? Like, how are you moving day to day? It's great that you voted for him in 2012, but how are you showing up in 2024 or 2025?
DEI programs make sure that the most qualified candidates, traditionally excluded from opportunity, are given the chance to compete. So this notion somehow that blind hiring could work, I think that's
But
that's
wouldn't
something.
it take the
but
like,
it's not
race
about
or identity
merit,
out of
but
it,
it's
and it would
not
be purely based on what you put forward?
But it's not about merit, because the people that are in these DEI programs are already the best of the best.
But she's
then
saying the
I'm saying-
companies end up
Oh.
doing tokenism rather than helping.
I mean,
not by the way they
the
approach
number of
DEI.
times I've
Not
had people in
tokenism.
corporate America be like, lean into the fact that you're an Arab American. I don't ever want somebody to be able to look at me and say you were a DEI hire.
Because
Well, Alyssa, and okay, maybe I was a little too crazy on thinking I would be agreeing with Alyssa too much. Let's be very clear, Alyssa. You have the option to be viewed as the majority, because until you told us that you were Lebanese, who would have known? You show up, at least to me, in the world as a white woman. So when people are telling you to lean into it, I don't agree with them telling you to do that, but you also have the option to not lean into it. And then when you're not leaning into it, guess what? You are viewed as a white woman, which has a host of privileges. So I don't think that's a fair thing to say.
so we're going to see within the next 6 months, within the next year, if there are less people of color or more or the same in the C-suites and the corporate
there will
offices.
be less.
But I'll tell you what, there's a lot
Okay.
of diverse people like you and me
Mhm.
who have power with our pockets.
That's
That was a little shade Anna did. There's a lot of diversity. There's a lot of people like you and me. She was shady because that girl just told you that she was Arab American, and you made sure to just highlight you and Sunny. But again, because people looking at you in your phenotype, people know what you are. People know that you are other. And I agree, because I have not shopped at Target since they dropped their DEI program. All right, guys. So thank you for tuning in to the Man on the Panel podcast. I know you might be a little confused, like, wait, this is a little different from what I am used to him doing on Everybody Just Calm Down podcast. But as you can see, this page is simply a network, and we have a lot of different shows that will be coming on here. Again, this one is called The Man on the Panel, which has more of a political bent to the show. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. Peace.